Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about my AMCAS app, how I optimized my med school application, what I would have done to optimize it further, what things I messed up on, what things I think I should have done better, just to kind of give you guys some tips, some tricks. I am a second year med student. I did get in, not without some significant drawbacks and stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and address those in the video. I'm going to drop a link in the description below to the video where it's like a 30-minute video. I tell you in detail of my entire journey. Someone asked if I could do an AMCAS app video, and I thought that was an amazing idea. So shout out to that person in the comments on that video. And so let's get started. So the way I set up my scholarships, and just FYI, I boxed out everything just to redact any of the information that could lead back to my school or anything. I just want to keep that private as best as I can, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you how I set up my scholarship. So I just kind of did it a list wise, and I told, I made Dean's List every year that I was at my undergrad. I'm not trying to humble brag, I'm just being straight up as to, my good sides, bad sides. I had a really good GPA at about a 3.86. Actually, a 387, I think, was at the time I was applying. And I had around a 508 to 510 MCAT, around that range. Um, and so when I went through each of my scholarships, I just put them in detail. So Dean's List, that was something that I saw on the AMCAS website that you could actually put down, and I'm sure that they care about that. So I did put that in, and I just said for all of these. You're gonna notice that I didn't get the senior year ones because this is obviously right before senior year. I applied my summer before senior year, which I talk about in that video as well. And then I got some other scholarships. I didn't list the dollar amount. I don't think that mattered. Again, every university will offer tuition based on how much tuition or how much tuition you pay. They'll offer that much help in terms of their scholarships. But I just wanted to show them these were the scholarships that I had. I didn't put a bunch of descriptions on them. I also maybe wanted to. I think maybe that would be a good idea. I don't know if that's changed or not in the 2 years that I've applied since. But you could maybe put a little like blurb, like saying, "Oh, this Virginia Weimer, I remember this one I was given to because I was a pretty good student in the biochem program." So that's awarded to one of the sophomore students that are now going into their junior year, or actually going into their sophomore year. And that's just kind of awarded if you have a above 3.9 GPA on your biochem classes, and then like the Sperry Scholarship was something that my university allowed for any STEM majors that were pretty good in high school, and then continue that into their freshman year. And so for my experiences, the most meaningful stuff that I did, so as you can see, this is like a wall of text. And now I can't, honest to God, remember if this was how I put it, but if I could have changed this, I would have. Because if I was an adcom and I read this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a wall of text. That is a hard thing to read. So I would have probably broken this up into like smaller chunks so that it's a little bit easier to read. Again, I printed this out using the AMCAS print tool. I don't know if that's going to change the way that it was formatted, but I do remember someone saying that if you put blurbs, so like this is just a giant paragraph talking about my like volunteer as a chemistry tutor. Instead of this just being a giant wall of text, maybe breaking it up a couple notches would have actually helped the individual read it because I talked to the folks and I have insight as a student into our own admissions committee at my medical school, and they do actually read these. So your spelling does matter on these. Not just spelling, grammar, how you set up your sentences. Do you coherently try to portray yourself in the manner that you want to portray? Are you actually just putting a bunch of words just to make it look like you're writing something, or are you actually writing something? So that all does matter. And as you can see, my total hours were really low. Um, I have, for some reason, oh, okay, so this is okay. Yeah, so the dates and then your total hours, and then again, I add the other dates because this was divided by 1 year and then the next year. So when I went and talked about these, what I wanted to do is I wanted to paint a narrative for myself. So why do these medical schools want to accept me as a prospective student for their COM 2024? Because that's our class year. And I just wanted to portray myself as someone that I love actually tutoring. This is something that I've always loved. I love teaching. I'm really thinking of maybe doing academic medicine, but again, who knows? So I just wanted to show them, this is the tutoring has given me a chance to develop these skills essential for any prospective position to possess. Because even as a resident, even if you don't like being in academic medicine, chances are you're going to go to an academic residency. Um, Chances are you're going to be teaching medical students, and then as a chief resident, you're going to be teaching other residents, and the list goes on and so forth. And then I talked about being a pre-med club treasurer. I don't think this mattered as much, in all honesty, as like because I didn't rank this as a meaningful experience. I did for the tutoring because that is what I love doing. And so, as I say later in this video, my most meaningful experiences were the ones that were actually meaningful to me. And that's what they want you to do. They want you to show them what you thought out of all the experiences you had. There were probably a good amount that you've done in your college experience, or even in your graduate if you went and did a master's or SMP. Um, what is your most meaningful to you? And so I try to portray that as much as I can. And again, I would have broken this up just maybe like a 3 sentence blurb and then another 3 sentence blurb, another 3 sentence blurb, just so that it's not like a giant wall of text. Because if you're gonna read this and sit down and read this, this is like a lot. It's just almost like word soup, right? So I would have broken it up just so that it's concise. They get it in packages that they can just read really quickly. Because at the end of the day, they've got five, six, seven, eight, 10,000 applications to go through. Some of those won't make it through the primary screen and the secondary screen, and then some of them won't even make it past into, trying to find interview candidates. But again, leadership, it does matter, but the pre-med club, I guess like every pre-med does it. So my adcom said they don't look at it as well as like other more interesting leadership roles, like maybe leading a extracurricular activities such as like a food kitchen, right, or a soup kitchen or anything like that. Like you actually were the lead on the charity drive, for example. Those would be pretty helpful. I couldn't get on any of those, but again, different strokes for different walks of life. So how I set up my shadowing hours, again, this is where I said breaking things up is huge because I wanted to show them what specialties I did, how many hours I did in each specialty, and that I did a lot of specialties. So obviously not a crazy amount of specialty. This isn't all the specialties in medicine. The big one is here, I think family medicine should be your biggest one because chances are when you go to medical school, you're going to go to primary care, whether that be family medicine, internal medicine. I don't know if we consider OB-GYN primary. I don't think it is. I think it's more specialty. But again, right? Like, doing baby stuff and gynecological care, women's health, that is still primary care and at the end of the day. But family medicine is a big one because chances are you are going to be a family medicine physician if you go into medical school. Chances are you also might want to do a specialty. So maybe do some specialties. Look what you like to do. I'm not a big fan of surgery just because of the hours and everything, but I wanted to see what it was like. So I had 20 hours in surgery. I had another 8 hours as anesthesiology with anesthesiology. I had 20 hours with interventional cardiology. That's just because the cardiologist that I was with was awesome. He was really funny, and he actually taught me a couple things that were pretty cool. Um, Pediatrics, 4 hours. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not a big fan of pediatrics. I value them so much because it is really hard, despite what people think. Pediatrics is very hard. And then ENT facial plastics. I had an 8-hour day with the facial plastic surgeon, the ENT surgeon. That was a really fun time. He also had an MPH, which really showed me how he used that in the field. He ran his own practice and did some epidemiology regarding like HPV within the nose and throat. There's certain types of cancers that can cause HPV can cause, yada yada yada. And then I also just broke these down, and then of course you can see that I put down the hours because those do matter. They want to know, okay, yeah, you had 80 hours of volunteering or 80 hours of shadowing, and then you had another 15. Okay, that comes to about 100. Well, what did you do during those 100 hours? Okay, he did family medicine, orthopedics, anesthesiology, blah blah blah. And then next, I also talked about I was actually a TA for general chemistry. And so then I just talked about a little bit of that. I didn't put this as a meaningful experience because while it was really fun and I loved being a TA, it wasn't as meaningful as my tutoring and as my being a pharmacy technician. I thought those were a little more meaningful than this. I also had 150 hours, not as much as the other ones, so I just put that in there because it still does that narrative work. So I'm still winding up a narrative in and of itself. But again, you can pause the video and read kind of how I went about doing this. I would have again broken this up probably around here, just put two blurbs, maybe not bullet it, but just at least so that they can, it's a little easier to digest. Excuse me. Here's the big one. This is where my first mistake was. And I'll talk about my second mistake, which probably you have noticed already if you're being pretty diligent. The pharmacy tech role for me was clinical. So I worked in a retail pharmacy at CVS. It was a hard job, not gonna lie. It was very tough. But as you can see, I had about 2,000 hours, and I think I was underselling that to be completely honest. I worked a lot during the summers, not just because I wanted to be in healthcare, but I also liked, it was nice. You're making some money. That money went to my books, my other, MCAT prep and applying and stuff. But at the end of the day, I should have put this as a clinical experience, not medical clinical. I think that shot me in the foot because at the end of the day, when they read that, they probably were thinking, okay, well, he probably was just like a glorified retail worker, right? Now, not disparaging retail workers, because if anybody's worked any kind of retail job, it is horrifying, it is soul crushing, it is hard, and I have the utmost respect for every retail worker. I make sure that I treat them as well as I can because it is not their fault when something goes wrong. It is definitely something with the entire system, and they don't get the, praise that they deserve just for dealing with the kind of stuff that they do, especially like servers and waitresses and the list goes on with the retail industry. But this here in my opinion, is clinical. I was working with patients. A lot of times, the person would come into the pharmacy right from the doctor's office, and I would be on the phone with their doctor's office and saying, "Hey, can we get a refill or a prior authorization on this?" And it taught me a lot about insurance, how health insurance works, how Medicaid and Medicare works, how the pitfalls of Medicare and Medicaid. I didn't even know what a donut hole was, which is like basically coverage for half a year and then there's like 3 months where there's no coverage at all and the person has to pay out of pocket for their insulin, so it's like 1,000 a month. I didn't know this, and I would have never known this because we haven't even talked about health insurance in medical school until this semester. We just had one lecture over it. That's not even enough to cover all the nuances with health insurance. And it's something that comes up repeatedly, time and time again. You're gonna have to do so many prior auths as a physician. So many of my attendings tell me how many times they've had to do a prior auth, or they've had to do prescription refills are usually handled by the nursing staff that you have on file with you. Obviously, very helpful. Nurses are awesome. But these are the things that you should at least be aware of, and I wish I had conveyed that more. So here I was just talking about the interconnectedness, because pharmacists, I did respect them before I started this job, but when I started being a pharmacy technician, I realized how many things could go wrong if you didn't have a pharmacist second checking you, not second guessing you, I guess, just being a safety check basically, because that's at the end of the day that's their role. That's not to minimize them; they're amazing, but I wish I had conveyed how much I learned. So again, I think I did talk about like the fast pace because being at CVS, if anyone's ever worked at a CVS pharmacy, it is very fast. You're very understaffed a lot, so it's on you and the pharmacist. If because I usually worked alone with the pharmacist, which was horrifying. You'd have a line of people, pick up, data entry, all this crap, and it just allowed me to get acclimated to, people yelling at you, people not happy with you, even when you alleviate some of their stress, they're still going to take it out on you. It's the unfortunate nature of life. I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. It is what it is. But I wish I had shown that more, right? And I'd also wish I had emphasized a little bit more on again, you don't have a lot of time to put this down, a lot of room to put it on, but I would have said, I have experience with healthcare insurance now, a ton of it. I have a ton of experience with how prescription drugs work, not the pharmacokinetics or pharmacotherapy side of it, which you learn in medical school, but the actual like real world, how are these patients taking it? Are they adherent to these drugs? Are they compliant? How is it affecting them? I've seen patients that haven't been able to get their insulin one day, and then they're risking going into DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis, which is an emergency, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all of that. Your statins, your ACE inhibitors. I got exposed to all of that before I even got to medical school, so that when we learned it just a few weeks ago, or like statins and all that, I had some background to it, and I already knew what those drugs kind of did. Obviously, I didn't get through all of those drugs, but I just wish I had leaned on that a little bit more. And then for hobbies, I put computer building. I love building computers. I'm actually on my PC right now. I build like 5 or 6 computers for friends. It's my second personal one. This is awesome. I thought it was amazing. And the 250 hours is not a lie. I love computers. It's just something that I really like. And this is something I put from 2014 to now because that's when I built my first one when I was in high school. And so I just wanted to make sure that they knew that I wasn't a robot and I wasn't just like some random student that I'm just a type A student and all I do is study and I have no other personal attributes or I'm just all I care about is school. Like, they don't want that. They want you to be human because at the end of the day, you're treating humans. And if you want to treat humans, you have to have some empathy. And so they want to see, are you a robot? Like actually just a student? Are you in a real person with real attributes, which you are. Everybody is. They just want you to show that. And so your hobbies are a great way to show that. And so I didn't put all hobbies, I just put this one. I'm a huge soccer fan, a sports fan in general, but I played a ton of soccer, so I put that in there. Like, I organized some soccer tourneys here in my hometown. I put that in there as well, and I actually got asked that on some interviews. Got asked more about my hobbies than my experiences on my interviews, which was interesting. And it just kind of led me some insight into how they're thinking. They know you're doing this. They know you're doing something clinical. They know you're doing some clinical volunteering. They know you're doing some research. Um, so they want to know what's going to stand you out from everybody else that's doing the same thing. One glaring thing, this is the second thing that I was going to talk about. I didn't have research on here, and that was a huge thing. I did research, but it was really late in my senior year. But if I had taken a gap year, like I talked about in my last video, which I really wish I did, I would have been able to have research front and center. And I had 2 posters and 2 presentations on that research that I did, and I got to do it for at least a year, which is huge. I didn't unfortunately get a publication because of COVID, delaying it, whatever. But, however, I still got 2 posters and 2 presentations, which are huge. I mean, it really helps me now in my research here in medical school. I do it at a children's hospital. But at the end of the day, I couldn't convey that to medical schools because I didn't have that on my application. So if it's not on my AMCAS, how am I going to bring it up? Now, yes, I know you can give updates, but not every medical school allows you to update your application with them, right? So they all have a copy of your application. Some of them do allow it. And as well, I didn't have it front and center in my thing, so I couldn't weave it into my narrative of being able to actually help the people. So I had some freshmen that worked under me. We kind of had like a seniority almost thing. So the freshmen were doing some of the lab work, and then I was doing the data collecting, and then I would actually synthesize, conclusions onto that data that we could put into our posters, and then hopefully into a publication, which unfortunately never came. But again, research is huge. Research is literally king. I think this sunk my application at a lot of schools just because I didn't have the research up in front. Lastly, things I learned, tips that I could give you, make sure your meaningful experiences are legitimately meaningful. And again, I'm not saying that people are sitting here and saying, oh, yeah, this is meaningful and it's really not. What I mean by that is take the time to make sure that when you go through your application and you select these 3 things are my most meaningful experiences, try to convey that as much as you can. I know it's not a lot. You can't put a lot of words onto there. You don't also want to bore your whoever's reading the application to death. But at the end of the day, make it count. So if you have only a limited word count, so you got to make it count. So you want to convey that meaningfulness and what you learned and how you developed as an individual from that and how that can translate into your medical school career and then your career as a physician because that's actually what they're looking for at the end of the day, right? Again, I talked about this, break out the paragraphs into smaller ones so it's not a wall of text. I did talk about this. I do have insight into how medical schools think because of time with my med schools AdCom. They do look at your personal statement. I just confirmed that. They do look at your spelling and grammar. That does matter a lot. And yes, even in the AMCAS sections, they confirm they look at those. So I know some people think that, and again, this is just from my med school. I don't know how others do it. Um, they do look at them, and they said that they do look for a narrative. They want to see, what kind of person are you? And then when it comes time to interview you, do you have that application knowledge inside and out? And is that narrative that you built true? because it's going to come out in interview when they ask you a bunch of questions. My medical school does closed file, but they also record the interviewers do. They record what you say and what you think and how you go about like an ethical situation and all that. And because they want to put that into your file, and then when it comes down to say, do we admit this person or do we just make them a wait list or do we reject them after the interview? They want to know, did your interview stack up to the person that that they were seeing on paper? So you want to make sure that when you're on interview, your application come to life because that's the person you're trying to portray, and ultimately that should be the person that you actually are, right? You just want to make sure that you're not to say that people are lying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you go in, you're saying everything that's on your application and then expanding on it as much as you can in that limited time that you have. Because at the end of the day, they want to provide some context to that piece of paper, which is your entire application, right? Again, the narrative thing, it's huge. Try to weave your experiences into that longitudinal story. Tell the outcomes, how you started, why you got into medicine. So they're going to ask you why medicine, why this school, where you got to this point, what got you to this point and what you learned along the way. Because everybody's experience is different, and everybody's experience is going to teach them something. Maybe it'll knock you down a peg like it did me, and then it'll humble you a couple times, and then you'll pick yourself back up and show yourself some resilience. They also love resilience, by the way. I know that seems cliche, but it actually is true because you're going to get beaten down a lot in medical school and just in general. And they want to know, can you withhold that amount of pressure because you've also experienced it in undergrad and graduate school, maybe before that, um, before medical school, and just in life in general. And again, if you did pharmacy tech and you were retail pharmacy tech, and now for hospital pharmacy tech, that's a slam dunk. That's clinical no matter what you say. For retail, I know it's like 50-50. People say, oh, it's not clinical, or some people say it's clinical. I wish I put clinical. I don't have it. I don't see what I lose. I stand to lose on that because I could have defended that it was clinical, right? I wish I emphasized that. I think I would have had a notch of 2,500. I think it was like 2,000 or 2,500. I can't remember how many I put. That many hours in clinical experience, that's huge. They look for that. They want to see, did you work in a healthcare team? And so to them, they probably saw non-medical and thought, okay, well, this is just another job. So maybe they didn't even read all of it that I was trying to convey. That's the big thing. Um, Apply to more schools than I did. I only applied to around 24. That includes all the MD and DO programs that I applied to. I wish I applied to more. I only got a couple acceptances. It is what it is at the end of the day. But apply to as many as you can, minding, you know, uh, finances because I didn't apply for any of the financial assistance because of my parents' income. But that's okay. That there's no issue with that. If you can utilize that, absolutely do. That is a huge burden off your shoulder because I just think it's atrocious the amount that they are charging for people to apply to medical school. It's crazy. It's $1,000 for like every some schools is crazy. Publications, they're huge. If you get one, it's a huge advantage for you. It's a giant win on your win column. Research, again, needs to be front and center on your application. Mine came super late, so it kind of shot my application down on some of those schools. Clinical experience is king. They do want to know if you've experienced the healthcare team aspect. Did you experience healthcare in any aspect? Um, because at the end of the day, when you're a physician, you're kind of the quarterback. That's kind of how my attendings call it. You are the quarterback, but at the end of the day, you're still working in a team. You're not the only one making the decisions, right? So your nurses are doing the bedside work for the patient, but you're at the end of the day making the highest level decisions on how the care plan is going to go by. You're the one that the note goes down in. You're going to sign the note. You're going to be the one that works in that team, but eventually leads that team in some capacity. That's not to belittle anybody else that works in healthcare. Everybody's part matters, especially the pharmacists and the nurses and the respiratory techs. They all matter. But at the end of the day, the person whose liability is going to fall entirely onto you is the physician, you, right? So the liability falls onto you if something goes wrong. But at the end of the day, everybody has to know, have you seen what healthcare really is? Because healthcare is a lot different than what you see on like Grey's Anatomy. It's not really like cut and dry and drama ridden. There is obviously drama with any workplace, but they want you to know healthcare is pretty brutal sometimes. You're going to see things that are heart-wrenching, and there are going to be times where you really need to lean on that empathy as a human being. And again, stick with the narrative, make that narrative shine when you're on an interview. And again, know your app inside and out for some interviews. They might not have it in front of them because it might be a closed file, but again, they're going to record what you say and how you say it, how you go about saying, certain things, how you emphasize certain things. Just be as how do I say this, as emphatic as possible about all of your research, all of your, not just research actually, just any of your experiences. Try to make it seem like you actually did have a meaningful experience. Not just say that you don't want to, that you didn't, or that you're lying, but it sometimes comes out, when you're really stressed, you're like kind of robotic. Practicing interviews really helps. I'm also going to have a video that I'm going to put out, just a couple tips on how to apply to med school, just based on what I learned from my own AdCom. Obviously, I wish I knew that before I even applied to medical school, but hey, I got in, so I guess I did something right. But at the end of the day, there were things that I wish I really would have changed because I would have been in a better position, leverage some of those acceptances. So, I get maybe some scholarships or something like that. And again, I'm going to put some more videos out on that as well. But this is the synopsis of this video. This is the end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to be putting out some more videos. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I do make some other videos, particularly for some med students and anybody that's in the medical field, like clinical videos and stuff like that. But I actually do plan on doing some more of this stuff. I do love, helping pre-meds because it's hard. It's hard being a pre-med, um, especially because I was a first generation physician, actually. So I'm going to be the first in my entire family on my mom and dad's side to even be a doctor. So I had nobody to actually lean on to tell me, what the hell am I doing here? Like, how do I apply to medical school? What am I getting myself into? And I'll just do some more videos on that as well, just to kind of help everybody that's kind of struggling out there, or even, just to help you guys in general. So thanks for watching and have a great day, guys.